Hi, everyone. Today we have a wonderful guest, Neel, who's the founder of Robinhood Army. We're going to dive deep into how he got started, what the company has done so far, what's the mission, and what keeps Neel going. So, Neel, tell us a bit about yourself and how did Robinhood Army occur?
Well, thanks so much for having me here, Utkarsh, and just wanted to call out. It's very inspiring to see what uh, different members of Network Capital are up to and how the community looks out for one another. So it's feels special to actually be part of this masterclass. So thank you for having me.
It's
I
a
think
pleasure.
so. Just introducing myself. It's always a difficult question, like to say in a couple of lines, like who you are. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm born and brought up in Calcutta and Bombay. I have lived across a few cities in a few countries, and I'm currently based in Delhi. I started my career in finance, found it really, really boring, and I don't think I was really great at it. And then I moved and joined Zomato at a very early stage,
Hmm.
and that was so. I spent around 6 years there, building different markets and different business teams. After which, I went to business school, and my life's passion has been something I've been doing alongside with Zomato and business school, and even right now I work in Google for the Google Pay team. It's something called the Robinhood Army, and that's something which I would love to share about and talk about as we go ahead today.
Yeah. My next book
Yeah.
is called The Passion Economy and the Side Hustle Revolution. And I noticed that almost every interesting person I know has a side hustle or a passion project. And in my case, and especially the other community members that I see, the side hustle is such an important part of that identity, that being. Tell me about the name Robin Hood Army. How did it come to you, and what inspired it?
So honestly, this was not extremely well thought out. It was quite random. So one of my in 2014, my role in Zomato was setting up our international markets. So I'd spent around 6 to 12 months in each country, uh, build our content, launch our team, take business to a certain level, and go to the next market. So this was in Portugal, and I think this was April 2014 when we were setting up. Then we were not very well funded at that point. So a lot of just like a lot of our establishing presence was through building local partnerships. And one of the teams we happened to partner with was this team called ReFood, which was a very, very credible organization in Lisbon and actually across Portugal. And what they did was something really, really simple. And they would collect surplus food from restaurants and give it to the less fortunate through volunteers. And honestly, till then, I've done nothing altruistic in my life, and I just found it extremely obvious, that something like this should exist. So I just was very fascinated by the idea. So I spent some time with the founder, who was an American gentleman who had gone backpacking into Lisbon, and I spent some time with the team, trying to understand what motivated them, what were their processes. And when I came back to Delhi, I got in touch with two friends, Arushi and Anand, and we decided to just like try it out for like a couple of weeks and figure out where that heads,
Hmm.
along with whatever we did. The name was like a lot of things in the Robin Hood Army, not completely like thought out. I think Robin Hood steals from the rich and gives to the poor. We don't really steal, but we try
Hmm.
to like make things a little more equitable and like use our networks, our resources, our time, most importantly,
Yeah.
to help people who are probably not as fortunate as we are or as blessed as we are. And army is because I think that comes a lot from it doesn't matter if someone is right or left or like what religion they follow or what they do for their full-time jobs or what age they are. An army is something which just has like one mission, which is like serving people. And I think that's why we just like kind of plug both the names Robin Hood and Army and somehow it just stuck.
Yeah, it has a great ring to it. What emerges is the concept of time banking. You looked at networks, you looked at unutilized asset, which was time, and then started implementing that in Delhi, where you were perhaps based. So, what were the first 100 days like?
It's a good question. I think even when we started off, we didn't really think through this is what the first 1 year, 6 months, 3 months is going to look like. And
Hmm,
I think for better or for worse, we just hit the ground running, and I think
hmm,
sometimes some of your best learnings or practices come from just like throwing yourself into the deep end. So let's say day one, we had a few networks, we had a few people from our networks who were restaurant owners, and we kind of convinced them that look, this is what we're doing. Can you help us with your surplus food, and we'll go give it to folks in the streets. And we were that time, a lot of us were living around central and south Delhi. So
hmm,
we thought, okay, let's go out and figure out who we can give the food to. And we had food for 150 people on the first night. Now, even on that very day, like I was actually not very sure whether we'll find 150 people, right? I'm like, okay, maybe that's a bit
hmm,
too much, and maybe the food is too much. But when you go looking for folks, right, like who live in the streets, who come to be treated in public hospital and living on the streets there, or orphanages or old age homes, there are tens and thousands in anyone's immediate vicinity, and you just need to go looking for them. So I think that's when this kind of like we had a light bulb moment between not just like me, but all the people who were out, the 4 5 people who were out giving food that day. And we're like, like um, if we want to do something which really makes a difference, we'll have to think about this less as a Sunday activity and less as an NGO, and more as like how do we scale this organization? How do we get people who
hmm,
are much better than us? How do we build systems through which people can like pick this up? And I think that was kind of like the first moment where we're like, okay, cool. If we have to do something, we should like really, really expand and do it at a large scale. Uh, Secondly, I think after that we started sharing a lot of what we did on social media. And
right.
like because Robinhood, like these were young working professionals wearing green t-shirts and going out and giving food.
Hmm,
And one major part of the giving the food bit was we're not thinking of it as a mobilization platform. It's like really like talk to the people you're giving food to, like make them laugh, like get to know them. They're
hmm,
not they're not you're not doing them a favor. You're just like spending more time with another section of community, and that's something which we still try to protect. Because that really helps us to get to know these folks and keeps the dignity in what we do. And so I think when we started sharing things on social media, and this was because a lot of restaurant owners were like, we don't know where the food is going. So we're like, okay, cool, let us show you pictures of where it's going. So we share these pictures of not sadness or deprivation or hunger. It was just like special moments of like, let's say, giving a high five to a kid who you're giving
hmm,
food to, or like spending time with some dadi and giving her a flower along with the food. And again, young folks are wearing green and doing this in their free time. So that somehow really resonated and connected with a lot of people and a lot of folks who from other cities, from Bombay and Hyderabad and Bangalore, Calcutta. They kind of reached out to us and tell us when you're coming into our city. And I think that was also slightly a pivotal moment because I remember having that conversation with Anand and Arushi. And I was like, do we wait till we get our structures and processes perfect in Delhi? And then do we move to the next city? Or do we just like either fly down for the weekend or get on a Zoom call and explain to people what are the 3 or 4 things you need to do to start a chapter? And let's see where that heads. And I'm so, so, so grateful that we took the latter option of like
hmm,
just choosing to trust people and giving them the playbook, like how do you onboard a restaurant? How do you like mobilize folks? How do you leverage social media? I think that was something which was really, really, really key to um, like our culture, which is of like complete decentralization. And what we realized is that a couple of the cities, Bombay and Hyderabad specifically, they actually grew much faster than Delhi in those days. And that's when we
I
realized
see.
that look, there are no dearth of people who want to make a difference. And there are no dearth of people who have a pulse on the ground much better than us. But how do we bring people under this umbrella? How do we spread the word? How do we kind of create this community of folks who want to make a difference but don't know how? And that's when we started thinking about how, like, what are the few things one needs to do to like set up a Robin Army chapter in any part of the world, even if we are not there. So I think the first 3 months was just a lot of surprise because we didn't expect it to
Hmm,
like be adopted so easily and be to be so transferable. And it was really, really, and still really is special. I think like the best part of what we do is not the Zoom calls, it's not the interviews, it's not the group sessions. It's just going out and like serving people on the field. That's uh, I would argue that a lot of us, including myself, we do it for ourselves because it just gives you a lot of perspective. That like a lot of things which you worry about in your day-to-day life are not that big a deal, and there are folks out there who don't know where the next meal is coming from, but they're generally happy people. And that's been like a big learning or a big reflection. It's been really good for my mental health also, just knowing and understanding that. So those first 3 months, again, like seeing that in person was uh, very, very, very powerful and very, very, very like it was just a very impactful moment.
Yeah. You talked about doing it for yourself and not
Yeah.
necessarily to empower others, although that is
Yeah.
obviously a benefit. Do you want to
Absolutely.
unpack that a bit?
No, absolutely. So, as I said, I think one is for me and one is for, like, let's say, the Robins. Uh, I think most human beings just really like to help people. I think that's why folks in network capital are helping each other out. It's not like there's any
Hmm.
benefit for them necessarily or anything transactional. It's just like you feel good to like be of service. I think through the Robinhood Army, we've kind of realized that you don't need to be someone influential, or someone who's very
Hmm.
connected or who has deep networks to like really make a difference. Like it's very easy to like uh, have meals with the family, they realize that their child is not going to school, and then probably like sponsor the his or her education for the next 1 year. It does not take a lot of access or time. Uh, but I think at one point we are traditionally groomed to think that like if you do really really well in life, and then when you do well enough, that's when you start giving back. And what we realized, like, and not just like me and my co-founders, but like probably at this point 180,000 Robins across the world, that it's actually very simple. And when you do it, that sense of satisfaction or that sense of like just pure purpose you feel is
Hmm.
it beats any appraisal, it beats any promotion. And I think also another part of it is like, and the part where you do it for yourself is you make lifelong friendships, right? Because it's such
Hmm.
a great shared experience, where you're building something which has nothing to do with like anyone's benefit, like personally, like there's no money involved, and every single person doing their free time, you meet a lot of like-minded people, and these translate into lifelong relationships and friendships. So like we were actually joking about this. It's been 7 years of the Robin Hood Army, and I think there've been probably 11 or 12 people who met their life partners, just
Hmm.
volunteering with
Hmm.
each other on the field. So I do think that there's a that while you're making a difference, and while hunger is a deep, deep, deep problem, not just in India but different parts of the world, there's 7,000 people in our country who will die of hunger today itself. Um, 1 out of 6 probably will not have dinner, and no matter how much we scale, we're still like very, very far away from like making a dent to those numbers. But I think what you realize is that it always starts from one,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then like the act of constantly giving, serving meals, spending time, winning trust, trying to figure out how you can make a difference to people's lives. That has such a just it's just got such a good network effect that at the end of the day you just feel much more connected to not just your team but the people you serve, but ultimately yourself. And that's why we have to unpack that bit, right? Like how does it help
Hmm.
yourself? I think for me that's kind of like how it really makes a difference.
Yeah, 180,000 people, all done voluntarily. How does one become a Robin? What's the playbook like?
Right. Right, right. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, that we share a lot of what we do on social media. So a lot of folks have been actually like seeing the work we do, and earlier it would be in large cities like let's say Delhi, Calcutta, Bombay, Hyderabad, but now it's like in 255 cities and 13 countries, out of which probably like 200 of them are in India itself. So it's every corner of the
Hmm.
country and every state of the country. And it's very simple. Like one can either just go on the website and sign up, or we have a WhatsApp number, which I will actually
Hmm.
just put out probably at the end of this
Hmm.
call. and someone can just send a hi on that WhatsApp number and sign up. Again, the very simple thing is that the number is 89719666164. I think one key part of the Robin Hood Army is there's no money involved. So every single person does this in their free time along with their full-time jobs and their families. So the ask is literally 2 to 3 hours of your week, right? And I think honestly, like even probably Mr. Modi is not too busy for that. Like anyone can take out 3 hours of their week to spend time with their community. As and when like people spend more and more time in the Robin Hood Army, they start leading chapters, which are like neighborhood pockets of every city, or they start leading separate functions, and then they might be spending more time in what they do. But the basic act of just like going out for local drives and signing up through WhatsApp or the website would probably take like someone 3 hours of your week.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We're all definitely going to put the number, the WhatsApp number, and the link of the form in the show notes. And we actually plan to send it out to our entire community. So hopefully lots of people will be aware of how to become a Robin. I'm interested in the network geometry a bit more. So can you explain that your playbook a bit more? How do things actually become operational? How does a Robin start, say, serving people, reaching out to restaurants? How does that process work?
Right. So I think there are two parts to it. The first part is what happens in a chapter or a city, and the second part is how do we kind of scale this in a decentralized way across different parts of the world. So the first part is like the way the Robin Hood Army works is hyperlocal in nature. So let's say a Bombay will be split up into 32 different neighborhood chapters. So let's say in one neighborhood, like Chembur, the food will come from residents of Chembur, from restaurants in Chembur. The volunteers will be people who live in Chembur, and the less fortunate will be homeless people, orphanages, old age homes who are around the locality. Uh, Now, when someone signs up, right, on WhatsApp or the website, they are guided to their local WhatsApp group, right?
I
And
see.
that's where like all engagement happens in terms of like people get information as to where the next drive is, the food drive, like what time of the day, which day of the week, and so on and so forth. And people can actually like mark attendance and go join a local drive. Now, the way it works is that once people start doing regular drives, Robins, they start taking ownership of the food piece, right? So, like every Robin gets either one restaurant on board, or sometimes they might get food for 10 people themselves, right? So, like the more Robins we have, the more people we can serve. Taking a step back from that, there's this whole process called scouting, and scouting basically means identifying the people you're going to serve, right? So that's also something which you need to put some thought into it, because especially in a place like Delhi, you can't go to a place which has 500 people with food for 100 people. You'll probably be mobbed. So scouting means actually driving around and kind of like analyzing and figuring out in every single cluster how many people live, like let's say under flyovers or in front of a hospital or in certain orphanages, talking to local government bodies or NGOs who've already done a first scan of like sizing the population who needs to be fed. So through that scouting, we already know who are the people we are going to be serving. Through the WhatsApp group, people are mobilized. Folks take responsibility on getting food from different restaurants or different like suppliers, and I'll go a little more into the supply piece. And they meet at a central point. They make meals of all the food they collected, and then they go out and basically they actually go to these predefined clusters or places we scouted, and they actually give the food. Again, the key point is that one is it's not about giving the food, it's about spending time, and that's something which we try to like inculcate in every single Robin. And two is we really try to encourage the members who've joined recently, who are in their first drive or second drive, to kind of like really lead the drive, because that's when so then they're not bystanders. At one point, they feel a much more ownership because they're doing it from a very early stage. And two is we also kind of understand who the next generation of leaders are and who are the people we kind of need to bet on, who will keep building out the Robin Hood Army. So that's how a food drive works. Now, what are our food sources, right? And who are the
Right.
like what earlier it was surplus food from restaurants, and then what happened, Utkarsh, is actually quite interesting. A lot of the restaurant owners who themselves would come for drives, or they would see photos of where their food is going. They're like, look, this is really like this is a great way of like giving back to the community. I also want to cook freshly cooked food. So the meals I make for my staff, I will make, let's say, 50 to 100 extra meals and I'll give it through the Robin Army. And so that became another source of food. Then pandemic hit, right? And before pandemic, actually, the third source of food was weddings. And it's
Right.
actually quite ridiculous how much food there is in weddings. Like there was this one time there was a restaurant in there was a wedding in Surat, and 7,000 like with the surplus food we actually serve 7,000 people, and like so that
Goodness.
number is also like really crazy. And finally there are also housing societies where like every apartment in a housing society gives one extra meal to the Robin Hood Army, and so we kind of mobilize that and we serve it to people. And lastly, there are corporations. So there are folks like Corp or TFS who kind of have like kiosks across every airport or railway station in the country. There's the Godrej Group who will give us dry rations. Or there are folks like Akshay Patra who we partner with because we have last mile connectivity or last mile distribution.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so they give us meals or dry meals at scale, which we again like mobilize and give to people.
Hmm.
So that's the
Hmm.
food source bit of it. And yeah, I think that would probably like cover how we go about it, right? I think the second part of it would be like
Yeah.
how do we spread this across and productize it?
Yeah. I'm very interested in the productization. And if you use any technology to make all of this happen, or is it just like basic common sense and intelligence?
So we use free tools of WhatsApp and Facebook. So at any given
Hmm.
point, my phone will probably have like 150, 200 WhatsApp groups of the Robinhood Army. But we also do it strategically. Like we
Hmm.
have, let's say, we have a group called the Boiler, which is
Hmm.
the city heads of all the Robinhood Army chapters in different parts of the world. And so on that specific group, like if anyone is doing anything, 200 or 250 cities get to know that real time, and that's very powerful. So let's say in one specific city, they realize that a lot of people who they're serving meals do have failing eyesight, right? And this actually happened in Pune, where they realized that like a lot of folks have senior citizens. So they convinced them that look, we have a couple of doctors in our midst. We did a partnership with a private hospital. They took these folks to actually like get their cataract surgeries done, 50 of them, convinced them,
Hmm.
spend the day with them, and got it done. And then two people actually, like 48 people improved their eyesight, two people got their eyesight back. And for me, that's the real Robin Army. Like how do
Hmm.
you bring out the best of humanity using food as a medium? So there are stories literally every other day like that. A city head will probably share it on the boiler. 200 other cities will get to see it and they're like, okay, cool, why not? Why don't we do that ourselves? And so
Hmm.
that kind of like really democratizes doing good, for lack of a better word. Again, what we also use in the boiler are leaderboards. So the
Hmm.
biggest days of distribution are Saturday and Sunday, because that's when everyone's off. Like we serve in a lot of cities through the week, but Sundays are a bulk. Now every Friday evening, religiously, there's a leaderboard which goes out, which basically shows the number of Robin Hood Army, the number of people who've been served every single week in reverse descending order. So let's say a Dhaka is on that list and they see themselves as number 12, and let's say like they've served like 5,000 people the last week, and they see that let's say Jaipur is in the top 10 and they serve 12,000 people. So they'll actually reach out to the
Right.
Jaipur folks and say, okay, like what are you all doing differently, and help us understand
Hmm.
your story. So there's a lot of like cross sharing and cross like learning from each other with just something as simple as WhatsApp promotes. So that's one
Yeah.
piece. Then there's in terms of like what are the teams? Okay, let's talk about technology first. Then every single city has their own Facebook group, right? And the Facebook group will have their own the Robins, um, the donors, the restaurant owners, and just the wider community who are cheerleaders. Like to see like what's
Hmm.
happening and how if they want to join, and they
Right.
share their local updates there, right? Right now, we are building out technology, which kind of like solves for our next set of problems, right? So like right now, let's say what we're building out is something called which will track active robins, right?
Hmm.
So right now, one bottleneck is we realize that a city is only as good is sometimes as good as its leader, and that's also a bit of a bottleneck, and that's not
Right.
scalable. So we're like, how do we get people to be self-motivated, whether there's a great city leader or not? And so we've come up with something. We've got a partner who's kind of building this out for us as we speak. And through that, think about Foursquare, back in the day where you could like check into
Hmm.
a restaurant, you can check into a market. So now through that, we can basically, through a platform on our website, folks can check into a Robin and Army drive in any part of the world. They can share that on their social media, and like their wider network can see it. Every time they check in, there's a kind of counter as to the number of drives they've done, right?
Hmm.
And people will have different elements of like let's say when they hit their first 10 drives, then they're a Robin Ninja. When they hit their 100 drive, they're a Centurion. And then there'll be like probably there'll be leaderboards with the most active Robins in the country. So again, we're constantly thinking about ways to kind of like use product or use tech to kind of gamify what we do. And now we have a separate team which is fundamentally looks at data. Like how many Robins are like at this point around 8 to 10,000 Robins sign up every month. But is that enough? How many of them are coming 1 month later? How many of them are coming 6 months later? And what are the reasons which could be leading to like people continuing
Hmm.
and not? So those are things we're constantly looking at, and we're slowly getting more and more specialized functions in what we do. Again, the key part is every single person is doing this in their free time. So it takes us some time to like string together best practices which we learned in our professional worlds. But it's a lot of fun while we keep building it.
Yeah, I can imagine. What does your week look like? It doesn't seem like you have too much free time.
Yeah, I think my wife will agree with that. But my that's an interesting question. I don't think I've been asked that for a long time. So my full-time job is I work for Google Pay. I look after partnerships there. So we work with aggregators, and we work with like large tech companies, and we figure out how do we like really make user experiences better and more powerful, and something which how do we make payments really simple across platforms. So in Google, I probably like work between. I start early, so I probably start like from 8 to like 6 o'clock, and I save that for work time, and that's specifically for my job. Um, I think after that, like it's a combination of like probably like 6 to 7:30. I will be taking out some time for myself, spending some time with my wife, our dog, going out for a run, and so on and so forth. And then I actually spend time with our teams. So we have different teams in the
Hmm.
Robin Army. We have an expansion team, we have a tech and data team, we have a strategy and ops team, we have a partnerships team, and like me and my co-founders, we kind of spend different times with that. And I try to go for food drives at least once a week to just like know what's happening with different teams on the field. So this probably happens a good 5 days a week, right? Like, and including the weekend. But the 2 days I don't
Right.
do that, I probably just spend time for myself. Like, I catch up on reading. I think mental health has become a big focus, especially since the pandemic. It's something where just giving yourself time to recharge your batteries, get to know yourself better, make sure you don't burn out, like look out for your loved ones and make sure they look out for you. So I've been spending a little more time just doing that. But yeah, the week does go by in a blur very often. During non-pandemic times, during non-spread times, I also try to like go visit different Robin and Army cities. So I try to do that at least
Right.
like 2 cities a month. And again, one part of it is just like spending time with the teams and just hearing back from them, like what do they think is working, what do they think is not working, where could culture potentially be broken, what could we do differently, and then actually going out for food drives with them. Because I think no matter what
Hmm.
someone says, like when you're out of the field and you're like with them, that's when you realize the full story. So I think that's
Sure.
something which I keep trying to prioritize and doing more and more of.
Understood.
Another thing which So the last thing I forgot, like which I do love my sports, so that's something which has always given me um, just I think I actually like my sports. I enjoy it more from a mental health point of view. It's just something which completely helps me switch off. So I do play squash once or twice a week, and I do follow the Indian cricket team. So if anyone's like, even if it's the most boring cricket test match which is happening, I will be like while I'm doing my calls, I'll be watching it in the background. Like right now, I'm actually in my like one part of my mind is thinking, what's the score right now? But but yeah, so there are a couple of other things which I do in my week.
Fascinating. Neel, you talked about culture being broken. This is
Yeah,
entirely voluntary, and it's a
right,
movement more than anything else.
right,
What do you
right.
do when you notice culture is broken? And give me a case study when things sort of started backfiring, and what did the organization do to respond?
Right. So I can do a whole masterclass on that. Like there's so many incidents and there's so many things to learn from. Like it's very fashionable to say that, like, oh, everything is all right, but it really isn't. So it's good to like there are a lot of like deep learnings to share from that. So one thing I've realized, or we've realized, is that uh, people who are in the Robin Hood Army are very, very passionate people. Like these are folks who really, really want to give back, and they found this medium by which they can like help people. And it's very like we don't really have too many rules except don't collect money in the name of the organization. So people can really innovate and change it to what they want. But because of that, they have very strong points of view. Now, initially it was folks like, let's say, young professionals who are doing this in their free time along with their offices. So you speak you speak a certain kind of language, you hang out in similar places, and culturally like very similar and homogeneous, which is not necessarily a new thing, is not necessarily a good thing, because a lot of group think, everyone has the same ideas, everyone has the same blind spots. Now I've seen that the Robin Hood Army has literally people from every single walk of life, right?
Hmm.
There are homemakers, there are students, there are retired citizens, there are doctors, there are lawyers, there are consultants. And obviously, when people come in with a lot of different ideologies, there could be a lot of clash of opinions, right? Like, oh, this should be done in a certain way and this should be done in a different way. So now let's say one case study is at a local level, there's a fair amount of like visibility which comes to the Robin Hood Army, right? So
Hmm.
people go out for like let's say local radio interviews and so on and so forth. So there's a one time where we just realized that there's a lot of conflict about who should be going for those calls, and like who's best representative to like represent the Robin Hood Army in a specific city, and people would be arguing about that. And that's when we came up with this caveat, which just like literally said, citizens first, mission next, Robins last. And
Hmm.
what I mean basically by that is like, let's say Utkarsh and me are part of a team and we're building something. If we are arguing about what is the quality of the food we're serving people, or what, like we have something called the Robin Hood Academy, what is the curriculum of the syllabus we're teaching the children, then we should argue and debate it out for hours till we like are both on the right page. But if we are arguing about
Oh.
something which is not to do with the people we are serving, it's about the team itself, right? Then we
Hmm.
are setting ourselves up for mediocrity. So that just having that caveat, like, is your problem a citizen's problem or is it a Robin's problem? If it's a
Hmm.
citizen's problem, then like you really should be worrying about it. If it's a Robin's problem, just let it go, and like things will work out one way or the other. So I think my one big learning from that is like it's so much easier to build culture proactively rather than reactively, because otherwise you're
Hmm.
constantly in just trouble fixing mode, and you're like, oh, this is what's happening and this is why I or Arushi or Sanchit or whoever's running it will say, oh, this is what my opinion is, and that's not scalable. Like you can't be there for every single people problem where there is. And you have to kind of equip people with the tools to kind of deal with it themselves and like build their own culture. So we've had two or three broad guardrails, and we've had like let's say 7 or 8 just uh, like culture values as to like how we go about what we do. Now the guardrails are really really simple. Um, One is there's no money involved, and I can get into that.
Hmm.
Like the earlier was a very moral thing. It's very strategic why there's no money involved right now. So no one can like collect money in the name of the organization. It's so decentralized that someone random could just be using the goodwill and making money, and we don't want that. So there's no money involved, and that's a rule for everyone. The second rule is there are no political affiliations, right? So it does not matter whether you're right, left, center, whatever. If you're here to serve people and you want to do something about the less fortunate people in your society, just come and be part of the Robin Hood Army, but no political ideologies, because we just want to make sure that's inclusive to everyone. And the third thing is, again, like, we serve all religions, right? And again, like, we've seen some of our uh, the most passionate of like givers might, because of like the ideologies or like just the way they think, might say that, okay, no, we'll probably like serve this specific community. And I'm like, like, if that's the case, then do that, but maybe not under the Robin Hood Army umbrella, because we'll serve every single religion out there, irrespective of like who believes what. So I think these are three guardrails which, if any new city is launched or any new country is launched, we're like, look, this is kind of the non-negotiable. Everything else is up to you. Like in the
Right.
sense, like how you want to coordinate your drives, how you sharing stuff on social media, what kind of partnerships you're doing. It's completely up to you, and that brings a lot of innovation into what they do. And like, in fact, we learn things from our cities, and which we then kind of try to scale across the across our cities. And then there's literally like, how do we do what we do? How does culture operate? And so we have this one session once a year where all the city heads kind of like fly in to one specific city, and over a day and a half, we kind of like just reflect on the last year, what's worked, what are the highlights, what's not worked, what are our learnings, and what are our goals for the year ahead. And it's kind of like almost like a case method, where people are just like putting in their thoughts and brainstorming, and then we kind of like try to put like, these are our learnings from this. So in one of the early ones, we kind of try to define what does it mean to be a Robin, right? And like, what are some common values that, irrespective of which city you're from, what language you speak, or how regular you are, what scale you're operating at, you kind of relate to. So I think like a couple of things, like we have something called 1% done, which means like, no matter what, just realize that the problem is still always going to be much larger than what our solution is. So don't get content. Like, you have to always keep reimagining what you're doing and figuring out like, how can you use that goodwill and all those people you have to mobilize more and more help. Second thing is something which we have called, and it's quite debated, but it's something called think less, do more. Which is like, like, strategy is important, but execution is everything, right?
Bias for
So,
action.
like, while you're strategizing and while you're figuring out the biggest plan, like, make sure you're on the field, because that's the place which is going to give you all the answers.
Yeah.
So things like that, we've slowly kind of built up our culture statement, and I just like I we probably did it in the second or third year. I wish we did it in day one. That's my takeaway, and it's something which like you always have to keep sounding off everyone, and you have to keep reminding yourself, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Got it. Talk to me about money and why is it strategic not to take any at any point in the transaction?
Right, right. So when we initially started, it was something we did on weekends, and a lot of folks would actually like join us because they believed in the fact that, oh, there's absolutely no scope of corruption, or there's no scope of like there's absolutely clean, people are just putting their time in this, so we believe in this cause. So it
Right.
was more moral than strategic. I think now what I've realized, like 6 or 7 years down the line, and honestly, I would love to do this 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, and like pay myself a salary and our core team and figure something out. But what we realize is that it's a platform and not an organization. And we are just the representatives. And there will be a time when there are other folks who are better than what we do, who will replace what we are doing. So it's not about our balance, but it's about like what makes the organization tick. And three things here. One is specifically ownership, right? So there's a gentleman, Rathi uncle. He's a senior citizen. He leads a team of 3,000-4,000 people in Pune. I think I mentioned this when we last spoke. He does a
You
food
did?
drive every single night of the year, right? And And there's so many like him, for them it's their baby, it's their purpose, it's why they like it's what keeps people going. And the second you pay someone a salary, right, like for some reason that ownership, or that this is, I'm part of a wider community and we're doing everything we can to make a difference, that purpose across like tens of thousands of people becomes lesser. And you don't want to kind of mess with that. You don't want to mess with what's already working. Rati uncle is much more important to the Robin Hood Army and the people we are touching than I am, right? Because he's making a difference on the ground for like tens of thousands of people in Maharashtra and Pune on the field. So you don't want to miss with that core motivation of what people are doing. The second thing is partnerships, right? Um, it's really, really simple to ask for people, ask for help when you're not asking for money, right?
Hmm.
And the pitch is always the same. That look, whether it's to a restaurant owner or whether it's to a large corporate, it's like, look, we're doing this in our free
Hmm.
time. There's no money involved. This is our way of giving back to the community and country. Are you in? So literally, if like let's say the partner is a billboard agency, so we'll ask them, okay, what are the let's say how many unsold billboards do you have across this quota? Are they 500? Cool. Can we have all of them for the Robin Hood Army so that we can put the word out? And we have the moral right to ask for it,
Hmm.
right? Similarly, the folks who are building us technology right now, like it's literally a four-member team which is doing this on the company account. And like they do it because they believe in the cause and because they want to kind of enable and what we're doing. Similarly, when we do like partnerships with an Uber or a WhatsApp, an Uber will give us like rides worth hundreds and thousands of dollars, or WhatsApp will give us a business API through which people can sign up online, which is generally paid for. So I think that you don't want to mess with that. Like the value of derived from these partnerships is worth like a lot of money. And the second I raise like even a dollar, that leverage is lost. So that's something which is kind of driving more and more people signing up and more Rati uncles coming into the system. And the last thing is just expansion. So every
Hmm.
time we get into a new city or a new country, we are just like, we don't need to do due diligence. We don't need to find out like what is someone's financial history. Are they like, do they have the resources, the licenses to set up the Robin Hood Army chapter, Robin Hood Army wherever they are? Like it's literally a Skype call for like let's say an hour, where first it's a sell where we are trying to get the person excited about what we do and we're like, look, this is how we do it, and are you in? And then we're trying to gauge that does the person have a bias for action, do they have local networks we can tap into, which will help grow the Robin Army? And most importantly, are they doing it for the right reasons? Is their heart in the right place? And
Hmm.
if it's a yes and a yes, then we just launch this, and that takes around six
Hmm.
weeks, right?
Hmm.
But if we have funds involved, and if we have separate bank accounts, and if we have due diligence, it slows down the pace at which we grow. So just for like context, like right now we serve around between 1.5 to 2 million people every month. We do that across 250 cities. We have a expansion team which is onboarding approximately 5 cities every week. And the point is, when that stops growing or when that stops tapering off, I would probably re-examine the zero funds policy. But at this point, like I think conventional wisdom is just don't break something when it's working, and I think
Hmm.
that's the way we are thinking about a zero funds policy.
Fascinating. Talk to me about your goals for the coming year. I understand you're growing and you would like to expand your impact, your scale more. How
Yeah.
can people listening to this, how can anyone who's ever coming across the Robin Hood Army get involved, and what's your focus?
Right, right. So there are three goals, and I'll probably talk about the third one, which is where uh, Utkarsh and me, like we started talking about network capital and how we can play a role in like making a difference in different parts. That'll come in. So our metrics have always been very simple: the number of people we serve, the number of cities we're in, and the number of kids who go to school for the first time. So we have something called the Robin Hood Academy, which is basically
Hmm.
we're teaching children of the families we serve in their free time in capsule courses of 2 months, and enabling them with enough education and just exposure to enroll them into government schools for the first time, right? So we do this across 150 cities. We've put around 3,000 children to school for the first time, and that's something we want to scale. So in terms of our goals, is like we like right now we're serving around 1.5 to 2 million people a month. We want to scale that to around 4 million people a month by the end of this year. We want, like, currently we are in 255 cities across 13 countries. We want to scale that up to approximately 20 countries. And we want to really double down on the countries which are kind of growing. And we also, like, depending on how COVID and pandemic pans out, just before pandemic, we started this whole system of how each city can adopt 4 or 5 rural villages, right? And provide them like meals for the month, especially the ones who are who are least equipped. So if pandemic permits, we focus and we deep dive and we do more with respect to that. I think one thing we've realized is that the model is really transferable and it's very scalable. And case in point being the second country we launched, and probably the fastest growing country is actually Pakistan. So we did not know these folks. Like, they heard about us, they reached out to us. We kind of gave them the playbook. Out of the 85 million meals which the Roman army served, uh, Pakistan alone have done 10 million meals, out of which they've served 9 million in the last year and a half, right? And that's when we realized that, like, if we have the right set of people who kind of like just adopt this model, innovate it according to their cultural nuances, and use it to make a difference in their respective cities and countries, like, the sky's the limit. A lot of really good things can happen. So this is something where we were just like, we're hoping to expand deeper into South Asia and Africa specifically, places which have very large inequalities, where there are folks who want to make a difference and don't know how, and which have social media, which will be a big part of like our expansion strategy. And we're hoping that, like Utkarsh has been, thank you so much for all your unconditional help. It's not even help, but your unconditional help in like putting out the word. But we're hoping we reach out to people in the community who might be interested in doing this in their free time, and just like spreading more goodness to wherever they live in.
Fascinating. No, I mean, I just reiterate that you have my support, Network Capital, unconditionally. And what you're doing is so important and so fundamental that anything that we can do, it's just like energizing to be involved in our small way. Just like last question before I let you go back to your cricket match is when you look at how far you've come and in terms of the organizational growth and transformation, how much of that is luck and how much of that is a function of great planning and great execution?
It's a really good question. And let's put it this way. I say a lot of what we do has been about being in the right place at the right time. Um, I think my uh, a lot of like learnings and mistakes which we made while scaling Zomato are learnings which we kind of brought into like while building the Roman army. A lot of the partners we have and still have are folks who I've got to know through Google and Zomato. So like being in the right place, and even like at business school, a lot of the countries we launched in were folks who were my section mates or folks who were connected to me by uh, within the network to their respective countries. So a lot of it is right place, right time. A lot of it is also by design. I think a lot of the places we kind of like have been in, we've tried to proactively look out for opportunities to keep growing the Roman army. I'd probably say like a good 60-70% is luck. It's not in your control. But what I'll also say is when you have clarity of thought, when there is a very positive energy in the team, and when you're focusing on just just the core mission, which is serving more people, bring out the best of humanity, there tends to be much more luck than when there is not. So I don't know whether that's a cause, an effect, or both, maybe. But it's something where like you shouldn't bet on your luck for sure. But I think with clarity and with just to focus, like things will fall into place. And it's something where, like, let's say last year this was in the peak of pandemic, and we started something called Mission 30M, where we were looking to serve 30 million people across a month and a half across all our countries. And this was a time where people were out of jobs, migrant laborers were going back, and we really had to change the game of like the scale at which we were serving. We didn't end up serving 30 million people. We saw 23, but it is incredible the amount of generosity which is there out there in the world. Like uh, folks who are running businesses, folks who are like in media companies, like they're just looking to help and they're looking for the right people to like work with and help. And I think there's one thing which like I kept telling our team is that what, like we're doing it for the right reasons. Luck will come in. Like we haven't figured out the plan, but things will work out. And like I don't know how we made 30 million, but we'll figure it out. So I do think that, and this is not just from an altruistic perspective. I think if like you're very, very, very true to your mission, whatever that is, right? Could be building a tech company, it could be like building a nonprofit, could be like captaining a cricket team. If you really deeply believe in it and you're just like approach it in a very, very authentic way, things will take care of itself, and the right people will come to your life in the right times, and call it luck, call it good fortune, but things do fall into place little by little.
It was a fascinating conversation, Neel.
I'm interested to actually like reverse and ask the same question to you, because it is a very interesting question. I'd love to know like what your take on this is.
Yeah. Neel, my answer would not be very different from yours. It's very difficult to plan, but both you and I are builders or we're trying to build a movement. Let's say that. Of course, there are different aspects of it. And I did start with a very simple idea that everyone has something to learn and something to teach. There really should be a mentorship ecosystem for everybody. I thought like you, I was at Microsoft, I will do that, after my work, whenever I have time. And at some point, just the mission took over. And I knew that I had to do this 24/7, 365.
Right.
And that moment happened in the middle of the pandemic. There was some design, there was some, purity of vision and implementation, but there was a lot of luck. And in my book, Neel, I talk about something called the luck surface area, which is what I thought you told very poetically, which is doing great things and telling lots of people. So when I look at Robin Hood's case study, or basically the story that you've told, you were doing incredible things, the Robins in particular, everywhere. And then through social media, you were able to scale intimacy. So if you look at the luck surface area mental model, it really fits in perfectly. So even luck can be designed. And I think in my own small way, in your way, maybe we've tried to do
that. Right. No, I love that. I love that term. I just made a note of it while you spoke. And but again, I think like what just like a lot of luck and a lot of like just momentum can be engaged by energy, and the energy you see in like the network capital groups and just how invested people are, like even like, and I'm an observer, like I've been seeing it over the years. When people meet up in different parts of the world, they also feel that sense of community, they feel that sense of purpose. And hats off to you and every single person who's been building this and enabling this, and like excited to see what lies ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what partnership with folks like you yields. And again, you have our unconditional support, and we're going to make sure that the link and the WhatsApp number and all other ways in which people can reach out is available. There's also a case study on Robin Hood Army by Harvard Business School that I encourage everyone to check out and read whenever you're free. Thank you so much, Neel. We really appreciate it and look forward to having you back with us.